I'm so excited to have interior designer Eric Ross joining me for the second time on the podcast. Over the summer, we explored his background, his design philosophy, and we talked a bit about his first book, Enduring Southern Homes. Today, Eric is back to tell you all about his upcoming book release, Embracing Southern Homes. We'll dive into the inspiration behind this new book, how his signature style has continued to evolve, and what readers can expect from this literal next chapter of his work. Let's get started. Welcome to Grandma's Silver, where tradition meets today. I'm Allie, your host of the Grandma Silver podcast and founder of the Grand Millennial Lifestyle. Here, we blend aesthetics with nostalgia, engaging in conversations with lifestyle brands, designers, and more to rediscover the timeless charm of the past. Join me as we journey from home to heart, illuminating the past and polishing the present with the gleam of Grandma Silver. Well, Eric, I'm super excited to be able to say welcome back.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had a chance to talk, and I want to throw this out there early so people know. So we spoke over the summer. I want to say it was July, so I'll make sure that in the show notes of this episode, if people wanted to go back and listen to our first conversation, that I'll link to that. And that conversation covered your background, your design philosophy. We talked a little bit about your first book. And we also talked a bit about your mentorship. So, if people are interested in hearing more about all of that, we'll encourage them to go listen to that episode, because this episode is super exciting because we're covering your new book.
Yes, thank you. We are excited about it.
Your first book was in 2019,
Correct.
Enduring Southern Homes.
Yes.
This will be April, I wrote it down, April 15th, 2025, which is very exciting, Embracing Southern Homes.
Yes.
Originally, I was going to ask you, how are these different? But it feels like maybe the better question is how does this book build upon the first book?
Yeah, that is good. Yeah, and you're the first person that's asked me that. I've talked to a couple of people, and they asked me, well, why this book now? Well, how is it different than the other book? And I'm like, well, it has different projects in it, but I like how yours is more like, how does it build upon the first book? Because traditional interiors are traditional, meaning there's a formula and a model to the items that we use that's not going to be jarring or new necessarily, but it's really in like the interpretation of traditional. And in my first book, I would say, as a designer, every designer wants to write a book.
Mhm.
And so you spend your career thinking about, oh, how would I do my book? What would my book talk about? How will it be unique or different from other design books? And the title is something that you really struggle with, obviously, because you want to grab people's attention. So with Enduring Southern Homes, I just loved the idea of enduring, that it has struggled, that it has pushed to survive and to continue. So when you're looking at a second book title, we really struggled with what to call it. I had my daughter and her friend like do AI, and we put in these different terms, and it kicked out the longest like sentence. It was like, I think it was like 12 words, and we scratched that. But that was an interesting exercise. But I was actually reading a book. They use the word enduring and embracing in the same sentence. And so that really is how I came to the title Embracing Southern Homes. I do like things that start with E. My name starts with E. So I like the continuity of that. And when thinking about my second book, of course, I'm thinking, oh, well, what if I did a third book, and how would the series lay out? So it would be more as a serial versus just this book is about this subject matter, this book is about this other subject matter. There's only so much to be said about traditional interiors. Really, in my mind, when I think about it, for Embracing Southern Homes, it's really about the concept of how design has evolved and yet still looking to the past. And I talk a little bit in the intro about America being unique in its ability to kind of be a melting pot of a lot of different design looks. So historically, if you have an English interior, it's going to look one way. If you have a French interior, it's going to look another way. An Italian interior, a Spanish interior. Those design styles can be mimicked, but how do you blend those looks together? And America really is the only place where that's sort of applauded, that we bring in a lot of different styles, and they aren't considered bastardized or torn apart,
Mhm.
but more celebrated. So we think about things in Louisiana, the sort of low country style or Creole style, and you have similar style in South Carolina with low country. You've got, English, colonial, Dutch revival. You have a lot of different parts of Europe that are celebrated throughout the country, but I think especially in the South, in old neighborhoods where you have Tudor homes, you have Spanish homes, you've got a lot of different styles, plantation styles. And so I talk about how it's interesting that my desire when I'm doing rooms is not to authentically replicate these styles, but to make them livable for today.
Mhm.
So as
Okay.
I'm designing houses for families to live in, because most of my clients have families, whether it's their own children or grandchildren that are going to be with them a lot of times, celebrating events. I talk also about celebrating how our houses should be made to share with others and laid out for entertaining and laid out for receiving guests, hosting guests, because I feel like that is another big part of the South is entertaining in our homes, and that we do a lot of it. So those are really how it's a little bit building on my last book, which was really just the celebration of the Southern style. And here are 12 of my projects. I've never published a book before. So here's how to learn a little bit about me. And I think I tell childhood stories in that book a little bit, how I came to be an interior designer. So this is more about how the design principles I use in designing houses, which really is about looking to the past
Mhm.
and making it fresh and new, not historically accurate. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And you said a few things that I just want to call out, not that necessarily you have a ton to elaborate on, but I think that they're really important. The
Sure.
first is maybe not as crazy, it's just something I haven't personally really given much thought to, is the title. Because not that folks who write fiction or very specific niche, like sometimes I think like health and wellness, your title and the health and wellness community is going to come with me with their pitchforks now when I say this, but I think the title is a little easier to come up with because you're talking about something so specific. Design and interiors, that is a challenge because it's not like you're just saying, my name is Eric Ross. This is, Southern interiors. Like you have to really make it a combination of what you do plus your personality plus your design philosophy. So that is really a challenge. I do give you and others who have interior design books a lot of credit because I haven't given that a whole lot of thought before.
Well, it is something, that you want to grab people's attention. You want people to pick up the book, to look through it. You think about selling and being in a bookstore or a gift shop, what makes one title more compelling than the other. The cover is also important, obviously. But the title, words are important. And I think I see a lot of designers use words and they don't make sense. They're too romantic, they're too poetic, and I guess maybe I feel like I consider myself a romantic, and romantic in a generic term, meaning visionary, creative, romantic in terms of big ideas, that's really the term I want to talk more about, romantic. But I do think that a lot of these designers I see their posts and they say a ray of light brings peace and harmony to the elements as they exist in the creative space. What does that mean? Is it
They might
helpful
have used
to the
AI, is what that
reader?
means.
Yeah. Is it helpful to the reader? Is it communicating a message? Is it a clear thought from point A to point B? No, it's like this weird squiggly line that's running around in circles. I'm just too straightforward in my demeanor to suffer that. And so I also think part of what we're doing with the books is educating enthusiasts, people
Yes.
at home who can't afford to work with me, but are big supporters of what I do.
Mhm.
I have a large group, a large community on Instagram and Facebook who love what I do, support me, encourage me, send me messages and love the imaging and the messaging that I'm putting out on Instagram. And so a lot of this is really for them because they just want more, they want to know more, they're inquisitive. And so I feel like it's a service to give them hard ideas. Like this is what
Mhm.
makes a home embracing. And we also talk about, I think, with welcoming people, the first thing you do is give them a hug. You embrace them into your home. And so visually, you also embrace them with comfort. That's talk about comfort being important part of luxury, that something is not luxurious if it is not comfortable.
Mm.
So those are ideas we talk about too, because an embrace is comforting. There's a lot of plays on that word. I can embrace Southern homes as an admirer of the aesthetic, and I can also embrace people visually with the comfort of my work. I mean, that's what was exciting to me about the title, is that it sort of lingers with you. It can turn into other meanings over time. I think words are important. That's why I was so focused on naming it something that was as compelling as enduring Southern homes.
When I was looking at your new book online,
Mm.
I was also, your first book popped up.
Okay.
And I was looking at the description of that and just kind of like refreshing my memory of how, all of that. There's a line in that description that says, people who embrace traditional interior style are people who love heritage and story. And then when I was thinking about that, and then the title of this book, and now especially hearing how you're describing essentially kind of the feel that you're communicating in
Yes.
this second book, I think that is such a perfect next step. I even think about what we do here, right? Like on the podcast, this is about heritage inspired living and how it's influencing our design, our general lifestyle, like all these different elements. We talked before about place-based, how your environment in a larger, broader sense, your home
Yes.
influences a lot of your design decisions, things like that. So I feel like this is just such a perfect example of almost how that evolves.
Yes.
There's an E word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Evolution.
Yeah, evolving Southern House. I've already started thinking about the third title, just because, of course, there won't be I mean, who knows when I hope to have a third book, but there comes a time when you have to really look at what does the public want? What does, more so than just this is my portfolio of my latest 12 projects. I mean, that is a component to it, is promoting my work, and that's why you do
Mhm.
the book, really. But I think that people want to see my thought process behind these projects. That's why I write a small intro in the beginning of each chapter that's basically, this is what the client wanted, or this is my relationship. Some of these projects, I have worked with clients for over 20 years, and this is like our second, third, fourth, fifth house. One of the last project in the book, this is like my fifth house for these people
Wow.
over, I think, a 17-year period. I was telling them my daughter's turning 21 next month, and I remember walking through their first house with her on my hip on a
Wow.
random Saturday, looking through, doing a site visit. So, we have long-term relationships. We have stories that helped me make decisions as to why I'm doing this in their bedroom, or I know the type of art that they love. And so when I was looking for antiques, I might do something that's more Art Nouveau or Art Deco because they're going to marry better with their contemporary art. The personality of the client has to come through in the house. I mean,
Mhm.
people hire me typically 99% for traditional work. I don't even do contemporary. We get calls for, I really want something transitional. I'm like, well, have you been to my website? No. Okay, well, go take a look. I do have one client and one project in the book in particular that is more contemporary. And I included it simply because I wanted to tell the story about this client and our friendship, because they basically hired me because of how I run my design business. They had interviewed several designers, but she had followed me on Instagram or I think her mother actually followed me on Instagram. So she said, "You should talk to this guy. I know you may not like his style, but I think he would be fun to work with." And so we interviewed with she and her husband, and they're like, we really want to work with. Would you do? It was interesting because they basically came back and said, "Would you even work with us? We don't want antiques. We don't want things that you love, but we want a beautiful home, and we think you can do it. We just love your process. You're very clear. You're very straightforward." Which I thought was an interesting story to tell. Is that people make decisions and they hire their designers for all different reasons. They really, interestingly enough, didn't hire me because they love old things. And I think my only caveat with that was, well, you have to have window treatments. I don't care how modern you are. I do not do projects without curtains. That's just, my number one rule, because they're just such a passion of mine and it makes such a difference in the home. And I still don't get tired. After 26 years, I don't get tired of seeing new curtains go up in someone's home. So that's where I feel like this book is more interesting maybe than the first book, in that you can see kind of a variety of styles, although still very traditional.
I love that you just touched on the relationship part though, because I think that also calls back to the word embrace, because there's also an intimacy to that, right?
Correct.
There's,
Oh,
so
yeah.
I think that's a great intersection.
Yes. It's like dating. I mean, you have to laugh. I mean, you have to laugh at my jokes. That's a number one. When I'm interviewing with clients, if we're on the phone for 30 minutes, you haven't laughed, then that just tells me we're not hitting it off. Knowing when someone's a good fit and that we're going to work well together because we enjoy being together. There's a lot. Also, there's a lot of, I need to know what you're going to respond to visually. And so getting kind of in your head relationally helps me do that. Like, oh, I know they're going to love this. It's very rare by the time we go to accessories, which typically in our process, like we interview with you, you hire us, we come in, get kind of your dream board, and this is a very abbreviated process, but and then we present to you all the custom items, which is drapery, wallpaper, paint, carpets. But then accessories is at the end. Like when we come to install, we bring lamps, artwork, knickknacks, sit around. I call them tabletop light, items. They don't see all of that. They never see any of that.
Interesting.
Because quite honestly, it's already overwhelming to show them all those other things. I start showing lamps and artwork and mirrors and tabletop. That's a lot to get them to commit to. So I
Mhm.
just bring accessories and then let them live with them for a week after the install, and they keep what they want. We have a very good success rate because by that point, I've seen how they've reacted to every other thing I've presented to them, and I'm just learning more and more about what they love, the things that they enjoy being with. And interestingly enough, I had a job we just installed. This is not in the book, but we just did this job last month, and they had a lot of contemporary art, and I was kind of nervous about it because there were some rooms that I'm like, we really need to do something more traditional here. So I had to pick some art that was more expressive, but not really traditional. There's a Venice harbor scene. I'm like, I don't, how this guy has nothing like this. Is he going to hate it? And they loved it. And they kept everything literally, which never
Wow.
most people don't just keep everything. They keep a lot, but it was so satisfying because I felt like, oh, here's someone who, even though they had existing things that were maybe not the same as what they needed in this new house, I still modified what maybe Eric would have done to better represent who they are,
Mhm.
and to marry with their already sort of modern art collection. I just want to throw some traditional oil painting in the middle of their living room with all this other stuff. I really don't think, I've been doing this 26 years, I don't think people, my clients, followers, enthusiasts, know how much we agonize over every decision. The candlestick. I mean, we are playing with like the mantle, and I've got a set of candlesticks. No, they're too big. And then I put the sculptures up there, these little spelter pieces. They were just better, although they were heavier. But we're playing back and forth, running around this house, and I always am like, I think we make it look so easy because I don't want them to see me there struggling through the decision
Yeah.
making. That's what they're paying me for. I really think they think we just fly in there easy breezy and start putting things up. My assistant and I and whoever I'm shopping with, sometimes it's Ruth Ann that shops with me, depending on where we are in the country. The discussions we have, we stand there and talk, and we pull up their pictures of all their fabrics and their existing items and whatever we've had recovered. Like, it is so research based, really,
Hmm.
what we're doing. I don't buy accessories ahead of time. I mean, there are some, I buy Amari every time I see it. There's some things like because you can't get it anymore, you have, so, and I always want to use X, like a pair of brass candlesticks, and you can't buy brass candlesticks. So you got to buy them vintage or antique. So there are some things I buy and just happen to want to use them. But
Right.
that's maybe 5% of my inventory. Most
Yeah.
of my inventory are things I have bought specifically for a client by sitting at my desk on the on the internet, or literally physically going to markets, local antique stores, High Point, wherever, all over the country, and thinking, "Oh, Miss Jones needs this. This is going to go exactly on this table by this lamp I've already ordered." Like in my
You can
mind, I'm
visualize it. Yeah,
yes, I'm
yeah.
thinking, and that is a talent, but it's also a discipline.
And I was just about to say too, like I think that's also part of the skill of the interior designer.
Yes.
Because when I go shopping, and I'm someone who loves, I mean, I'm not a designer, but like even someone who so strongly enjoys design, I don't have that professional skill where I will go out shopping and just kind of be like, wow, I really like that. I feel called to this thing. I don't go into it with the designer mindset of like, that belongs at X space, and here's why it fits. And here, we don't, as general consumers, go into all of that. So
Well, and
that's
that's
like the
where
skill of the designer.
yeah, and you bring up a good point. I talk about this a lot with when I'm on podcasts or interviewing people. Is that the skill you're paying for is the designer's ability to take disparate items and make them unified?
Yes.
Because most people shop like you do. I
Yep.
mean, every client I have, I go and I go, "What the hell is this?" I've got a pile of stuff that literally does not go with anything.
Yep.
It's the most random conglomeration of things, and it's my job to make it look like, oh, well, of course he put that there, oh, of course, that's going to go on that table or whatever. That is a fine tune. You have to hone that over time. The older your designer is, the better they're going to be at it. Like, I don't think there's any 26-year-old that's great at that. That's one of these honed skills that you have to
Mhm.
learn by doing. I see a lot of bad gallery walls. I see a lot of bad accessory jobs because there's not a unifying element. They're not playing well together. They're just like, oh, this is interesting, this is interesting, this is interesting. And maybe the colors go, but then that's where it ends, or maybe even the worse than that, the colors don't go together. So if you don't know how to do it, you need to have enough discipline as a designer to limit yourself in doing gallery walls. Editing is a strong component of what we do also. I think the DIY or the enthusiast in design doesn't have the discipline to edit.
No,
Like
that
the
would be me.
meaning,
Yeah, no, I'm a
the
bad,
meaning of the
bad
yeah, the
editor.
meaning of the things are so confounded. They're so important that they override your ability to use your brain. Like it's like, oh well,
And my
this
husband put you up to this conversation.
no, but like I see it all the time, and it's we use a lot of people's stuff. A lot of people. We did an install yesterday, and they had a lot of things. Now, there were some things we didn't use because I'm like, there's no place. This doesn't fit. This doesn't fit with the style we've done, and just because they have it. But we used a lot of their things because they worked. And what I typically hear from clients is, I would have never used this,
Mm.
and I didn't mean for you to use it necessarily, but it looks so good there. When I was younger and my clients had limited budgets and they needed things, I was left with, well, I got to use what they have because I have to make this look full and complete. And so you learn by doing. You learn, okay, these things do kind of play well together. I think I may have talked about this a little bit in our other interview. Is my first designer that I worked with when or so she's a mentor, was a mentor, and I watched her do a tabletop, and she did it like 5 times. I said, "Well, she doesn't know any more than I do. This is like watching me do a tabletop. And it really is a puzzle you're putting together. So, like a lot of that, that's most of the time I know exactly how that table is going to look, but there are times where it's like, oh well, they had an item that I used because it was appropriate,
Hmm.
and so I don't. So then it changes the landscape of the tabletop now or the bookshelf. And so then you got to play with it more because this wasn't in my original plan. Oh, they have a set of dishes. Now I have to maybe my candlestick doesn't work, or so there's a lot of that just have to kind of work on the fly, and that's the creative, the artist part of what we do. A lot of these designers maybe don't have the experience, or they're so scared of it, of looking bad, meaning they may not do a great job. But I'm sure some of my first experiences were questionable, what I came up with. But the more you do it, the more you learn what works, and just experience is important teacher in this field. I mean, you learn
Yeah.
a lot. In the Southern home, accessories are important in the Southern home. I mean, most Southerners have a lot of heirlooms, a lot of things that an aunt had or a grandmother had, and we can't just throw those out. We have to make those things feel important, and the layering of that makes it feel authentic, that it's their home, that it hasn't just been decorated with a bunch of new things.
Some might say you need to embrace them.
Yes, exactly.
You have in like different ways touched on this a couple of times, right? Like that you're working with different styles. And I don't want to say that you're necessarily like stepping out of your comfort zone, because I think that you're seasoned enough to know, like what you're doing. But you mentioned early on that this book's projects range, perhaps, I don't know if you would say different styles because they're all rooted in traditional interiors, but influences maybe.
Sure.
Did you want to
Yeah.
speak to any of that or what people
Yeah,
could
I think
expect?
yes, absolutely. I think you bring a good point here, that all of my rooms, first and foremost, are comfortable. They look comfortable. They look like you want to sit in them, regardless of whether it's a modern fabric or more contemporary, silhouette. So my Eric Ross stamp is going to be on all of these rooms because
Hmm.
they feel layered, they feel lush, but then they also feel livable. So even when I'm doing something sparse, I want it to feel like it existed in some point in time, is really what my goal is with this contemporary project we just installed yesterday. It was very case good heavy, meaning cabinetry, like dressers, credenzas, desks, bookshelves, armoires, because they were bringing things from a house I'd done for them like 4 years ago.
Okay.
you know but we did have some wallpaper, we had some window treatments, we had some rugs, but it was really case good heavy. And in selecting, that's not like, I can pick upholstery all day long, boom boom, hit the website, I pull up the vendor, boom, this sofa, this chair goes together, this ottoman. Case goods, they're unforgiving. I can hide an ugly track arm with a pretty fabric or a pillow. With a case good, there's no hiding. It's like, it's a cabinet, it's a box, it's got drawers, it has hardware, it has legs. And the real thing, my real pet peeve here is with contemporary is like a Sputnik leg, I call it. It's like this 50s, just like diagonal leg. It's like a
Yes, yes, yes.
cylinder, and it just it looks like it looks to me in my 1970 childhood mind like a 50s Howard Johnson motel. I do not have a love for mid-century. Is it soft? Is it embracing? Is a modern home embracing? I mean, I don't. Is it? I don't think so. I mean, because everything's hard. Anyway, all that to say, this project was a head scratcher because that's when you go into modern furniture, you see a lot of that. I call it a Sputnik leg. It's like just this straight rod that's glued to the bottom of a box. And it's
Yeah.
just, in 5 years, they're going to hate it. I already hate it.
The
So
bad start.
right now, like, they're young, they're cool, they want this modern furniture. So I had to really, that was looking at the case good. I was like, what am I going to like in 10 years? So take tradition out of it, I guess, the word tradition out of it. It's really timelessness. And so that's what I love about tradition, is that it is familiar. There's a familiarity to it. So, like, one of the pieces, although it was shaped very modern, it had like slab marble doors. Well, that's timeless. I can look at that for 10, marble. It's a beautiful
Hmm.
veining, it's a real material. The one of them was like wrapped in raffia, but it was had like chrome legs. I can look at that for 10 years. I mean, that's where I was really looking at, was like, what am I going to want to live with for 10 years? Like, it's going to feel warm, inviting, handsome. I think contemporary is interesting to work on. I thought I did a great job. I mean, I did it. But It was definitely more modern because I had a guy show up to do a repair, and he was like, "This doesn't look like anything you do."
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, yeah, it's
Yeah.
not. But but I was like, if you look around the room, it definitely has my touches. I had a beautiful kind of Gracie inspired fabric. You're not going to see that in a modern house, but it was in the master bedroom where I felt like, bedrooms. I've talked about this in my book before, and bedrooms to me should are intrinsically feminine. Like
Mhm.
they should be soft, they should be restful, they should be alluring. I just think a bedroom is inherently, by definition, feminine. Should be.
Mhm.
So I softened everything up. Then but I did do notes of black so that the man, felt like it was a little more modern. So there's certain things you can do. I really worked on this particular project to reflect my style, to answer some of their demands for it to feel more modern and contemporary. They were thrilled. They sent me a wonderful text last night when they got home to see it. That's where it's fun to do a project like this because I don't do it every day, and it pushed me to look at it in a different way. But that's where the beauty of collaboration is. What I'm asking for in a room is for me to want to linger and feel comforted. That's like my key ingredient. So that's where I feel like the word embracing again just highlights the idea of comfort in a room.
Yeah. You said that working, like this contemporary project in particular, it pushed you to kind of look at things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find like I'll use the books as an example because they have so many, they both have lots of projects in them, but do you find that when you're working on, you went into your first book with like a very specific philosophy, right? That was and those projects represent that design philosophy. Do you find that anything changed in the projects that you did in your second book? Is this making sense? I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
making sense.
I like it. This is a compelling question because it's having me look at my design style as it has evolved over the years.
Yes, you worded it better than I, but yeah, there it is.
I think that yes, absolutely. I think one big thing as you get older and you've done this for so long, as your budgets get bigger, you get
Yeah.
that helps. So you can actually investigate other lines that maybe you haven't bought from before, whether it be fabric or wall covering, and how to integrate these into a project. I did a really traditional project in the book that I'm super proud. It's my favorite project I've done in a long, long time. Probably my favorite project I've ever done. Plus the clients were amazing and they wanted me to do what I wanted to do. But he had a speakeasy, and this isn't even in the book. This didn't even make it in the book. This house was so huge. But there was a speakeasy, and I did kind of Art Deco in there. I softened it. I mean, there's a Lee Joffe velvet print. Don't get worried on pillows.
Not too crazy.
Yeah, but like the case because the big huge media cabinet was Art Deco. The cabinetry was Art Deco. The built-ins had an etagere instead of a window treatment. They had this little skinny window. Of course, it's mostly for TV or game watching. And there was this little skinny window. So instead of putting a curtain, I did a shade and then did this big etagere, this sleek etagere. So then you could get these little bits of light that come through. And all that to say, I don't know that I would have done that 10 years ago, gone into Art Deco.
Mm,
I was like, I was thinking, how do I make this, because of the size of the project? I'm like, I don't want the house to get boring. I don't, as the house unfolds and you go to all these rooms, it's just more gorgeous antiques. I mean, that really, I mean, I love antiques, but that can get real sing-songy or be, oh, here's another beautiful room. Here's another beautiful room. That can get in a house this big rote. So
hmm
I'm like, here's a hole. It's upstairs. It's the far side of the house. What am I going to do that's going to like wow people? Like we added a little powder room up there, and I just black and white marble in a geometric pattern. This wild geometric pattern, and then I did sort of more Art Deco, like I said, in the room off of that. That was his speakeasy, and it was fun. It was fun to do. But again, learning through being at this point in my career, I had more experience. I've seen more Art Deco things and Art Nouveau things. And so I felt confident enough to present that, to risk it. Plus, the client allowed me to be free. He's like, I want it to be wild. I want it to be masculine. So he's like, I want it to be my room. That's one in particular I can point to where I wouldn't have been brave enough to done that 10 years ago. When you start interior design, you do what anybody wants.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start developing your style and it comes through all these rooms and you can step back. Then people start coming to you to do that. It's extremely rewarding when someone says, I just want you to do an Eric Ross room. When I left my mentor, it was like, okay, what is an Eric Ross room?
I
At
was
that,
just about to ask you about that. Yeah. Like if
I've
that
been
was a
doing, I
challenge to grow into
yeah,
that.
yes, because I understand branding. I understand, we had a brand we had that we were following a formula. This is what their clients wanted, and then you go out on your own. You're like, wait, I can really change this. I don't have to do this formula anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What do I want to do? What do I think would be great looking? So yeah, and that just takes a lot of time, which is 26 years in this business. It's fun now to, have a second book to be able to show what my actual design style is and how it's evolved and have it be appreciated. I mean, that's means so much to me. It's a big deal to have a book I published oh, I didn't publish it. That was published 6 years ago that's still selling. Every week I get a picture from a client, from a friend, from someone. Hi, I just saw this in a store. I'm in, Florida, or I'm in Birmingham, or I'm wherever. So that's very makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, it also speaks, I think, to what the content of the book, which
Yes.
is that it doesn't go out of style, right? It's
Right.
not about this trend that was hot for, a year and then everyone bought it up. And, it's the fact that no pun intended, like it is enduring.
That was a motivator was, well, if this one was so well received, then, and that's what I asked the publisher when I called my editor, was like, hey, I really am ready to do a second book. It's but by the time it takes about a year to a year and a half to put a book together. So,
Yeah.
when I called her and she's like, actually, we were just in a meeting talking about you, saying, I think it's if he wants, would he want to do another one? So that just worked out time. That fact that I called her and, she's like, yeah, we're ready. I think it'd be great. And then getting on their publication schedule and it all worked out. So that was sort of really the impetus was I really am ready. I have enough, a lot of it is you have to have enough great projects,
Right.
that are worth being photographed.
How many? And I think you said 12 were in the last. Is it 12 again in this one?
Yes, yes, they
Okay.
both, yeah,
Which is
12
a
in the first.
lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah.
And to photograph, to style them, to go to the clients, to inconvenience the client. They're so gracious to allow us into their homes again and to share the work. And it takes sometimes 2 or 3 days. We have to be there. Our process is we go the day ahead to style, then the photographer comes the next day, and we may have to have another half day if we, depending on the size of the project and depending on where it is, and if we're having to stay another night in a hotel, is really the determining factor there. But it really is a big deal to put all this together and a big labor of love. I do have kind of a formula that I go by. I enjoy the book making process overall.
You're a unicorn. That's not the feedback I usually hear, but that's great because
Um,
it should be a passion project.
Yes, and I do. It's fun to see the work that I do. It's fun to go back and fluff all their pillows because nobody ever does it right, and to straighten all their stuff again. To also hear you make reconnect. There are several projects in the book that are not in Middle Tennessee. The base of my work is really Middle Tennessee, which is the surrounding area of Nashville, and about
Hmm.
200 or 2 hours north and south. I don't go a lot past Cookeville, which is it's literally the Tennessee's long, and we literally surface the middle of it. There's projects in this book from Annapolis, Maryland. We have one in Columbia, South Carolina. We have one in Fort Worth, Texas. One in Kentucky, which is really where I'm from. It's
Okay.
my niece's lake house, which is spectacular. We just finished it. I mean, right before the deadline. Like we photographed,
Wow.
sent everything because I wanted to include it. Just because it's an amazing, I have such a close connection with my niece and her husband, and he's a home builder. He's a high end home. He's probably the best home builder in my hometown, which
Well,
I
give
should
him a
say.
shout out. What is the
It's MC Homes. It's James
Okay.
Nashville, and they do an amazing job. And he's really grown that business. I'm super proud of him. He has two designers on staff for him.
Wow.
Like I started out helping him with specs like 20 years ago. And then I was like, James, you're going to hire somebody. I can't do this anymore. So he's found a great team, and he's just an awesome guy. I'm super proud of him. So I wanted to include that. But I'm also proud of it because it's beautiful. I decorated it, and my niece and I, she helped me install it. So I was like, I'm not paying for my people to come up there and do it. Of course, it's because it's not family. So we spent 6 hours unpacking lamps one day, so it was fun. I mean,
Oh my
it
gosh.
took 6 hours to unpack a house full of lamps, which I've never done.
Wow.
Typically, we do stage all of our jobs ahead of time. So the warehouse will unpack everything, put it in my room, and then my assistant and I'll go over and stage it by room and wrap everything ahead and all that. So I just shipped everything to Kentucky, and then it got delivered to the house, and she and I are in the garage breaking down all the boxes and unwrapping everything. And I was like, I had no idea it takes 6 hours to unwrap a house full of lamps. This is why I don't install this way. Because you lose a whole day just tearing down trash.
You said something which is so interesting because you do normally work in kind of a concentrated area. I
Mhm.
mean, if we can call it that, right? Like I know it's
Yeah.
hours,
Yeah.
but because some of these projects that are featured in the book are largely Southern, but have their own regional influences, like what you'll see in Annapolis is probably a little different than what you're seeing in Texas.
Yes.
Likewise, Kentucky, especially because like a lake house has a more casual air. Like there's a lot that plays into all of it. But do you
Yes.
find that your approach changes? Like you're sticking with more traditional in all of these areas, but does the regional influence get taken into consideration?
I didn't really take a lot. I think in Annapolis, they were on the Chesapeake Bay. So my
Okay.
consideration there was a lot of color. And the client loves bright colors. And that's a story I tell in the book as well. The interaction with her and us. I'd never worked with her before. And, it was funny how we came to our final color scheme. But in because they're going to be there in the summertime. It's always going to be sunshine unless it's going to be mostly saturated by sunlight. You're on the water. You get a lot of reflectivity off of the water. So yes, in that aspect, 100% I considered place.
Mhm.
In Texas, I mean, not so much. That house was a remodeled ranch, so it had kind of low ceilings and limited lighting. So brightness played a factor. I wanted things to be more bright, but I would do that in Nashville. I found even in Nashville, there's houses, if the light's coming from the north, it affects color. If all the exposure is north, the colors never look like they do in my studio. I have to go to the house. That's a very rare occurrence when you have all north light, but it does happen sometimes. So really that can happen even on location here, but between like South Carolina, Texas, Kentucky, all of those, really, my emphasis was antiques and draperies. I just have such a passion for antiques. There's just so much craftsmanship in something old. You just can't make this stuff hardly anymore. You cannot make a hand painted dish. I mean, you can, it's like going to cost you a fortune. There's only so many workshops doing hand painting of anything. So that's where, like for my niece's house, here's a young family. They're early 40s. They have three small children. How do I make this look and feel like a family place and yet have gorgeous drapery, have gorgeous antiques, have gorgeous dishes? We did a blue kitchen. My niece said, "Can I have a blue kitchen?" And I was like, "Ain't," because I'm thinking, how long is that going to last? So that pushed me to look, okay, typically, no, I would never do. That's a for me, bold move because what I'm thinking is, I'm not going to want to repaint this kitchen like in 10 years. But I mean, in a lake house, to me, you're on the water. Again, the blue plays to the whole mood and the theme and the purpose of the home itself. In a way, yeah, all the locations do affect the design choices, but my overarching filter is how do I make this beautiful and livable?
Well,
And
it sounds like they're all still rooted in that
yes,
in your philosophy is the right word, but like
yeah,
your design your values and
yes.
all
Yeah,
that.
I am not a quiet person, like in terms of, I mean, I wouldn't describe my work as showy, but I want a wow. I want to wow someone when they walk into one of my rooms. Like it to be just as much as I want it to be comforting and embracing and traditional. I want it to be a wow, an experience that's also visually stimulating. That's a big, so that's why I think why I use a lot of statement prints in my work. Like without, that's sort of my, again, my design process. I start with a print always. It's like in this modern house that I did, just transitional, I guess, or contemporary. Every room had the print, the drapes had a print. The bedroom curtain had a print, his office had a print, her office had a print. I think just having that dynamic movement in a room, especially when you're going to have gray, the whole house is gray. The walls are gray. Her office has a gray grass cloth. So that speaks to them. They like the clean, minimalist nature of that. So I'm not going to be painting, and that's jarring. When you're in that environment, everything does need to be monochromatic. So it's easy to transitions are natural, I feel like. Whereas if you're in a traditional home, you've got crisp white moldings and a pair of columns, we can do something dynamic beyond. But how do I make these rooms still feel like a wow?
Well, you're calling out something important, which I also think speaks to kind of what you do well, which is that I think sometimes traditional gets a bad reputation because people associate it or think it's synonymous with stuffy or boring. You can still have that wow factor without it being, like you said, jarring, or without it being like airing too trendy, or you can integrate it all in a way that it will still work in 10, 20 years,
Yes, yes.
but that it is still interesting.
Correct. These are big investments. My number one, belief when I'm working with a client is it going to last you 10 years or longer? I have a lot of clients who have 17-year-old rooms that I go in and redo just because they're tired of them. A lot of that is, how can you build upon this? So because these rooms don't exist in a vacuum for 17 years. They're still buying a new footstool, a new pair of pillows, two lamps we replaced, whatever. But to me, when you can go somewhere with a color scheme, when we can change things up, it's very hard to do that restoration hardware look that has been so popular for so long and change one item in it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you change one item, the whole formula breaks down.
Hmm.
Now that it's, what are you going to do? Two new white lamps because you just had white lamps in there. So I feel like that's really my biggest pet peeve with that whole look, with that Instagram interiors AI look. That still people are tired of it, but it's still so strong and popular. You got to redo your whole house when it's dead. You're not able to get everything. Every room has to go. All 10 rooms have to go when that is out, which is why it's a boon for retailers like
Yep.
Restoration Hardware, because now you've got to redecorate your whole house. That whole idea of a transient room, I think that people are tired of it. I think, I've always been tired of it because, like, I don't want to just get rid of stuff. But I think people now are looking for craftsmanship, they're looking for quality, they're looking for a story.
Yes.
It's resonating with people who are younger and who are just starting to create their homes, because the generation before them had the all white room. And that's, it's like everything goes around, comes around, that old adage. It's true. I've been around long enough that it's coming back in style, and I can help celebrate it with a new generation of enthusiasts.
Absolutely. And I think you're speaking to, I'm 33. That's partially why I was so intrigued originally. I thought it was so cute that they had Grand Millennial. And I kind of don't love the term, but I use it because it does accurately describe this whole group of us who are reappreciating and
Yes.
kind of latching on to a lot of the things you've just described, which is comfort and like wanting that more nostalgic space, that more story driven, heritage inspired. And I think it's actually really exciting that you have this like book that is all about embracing and about comfort. And I'm super excited to see the projects in there. I'm sure others will be well timed.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. Well, thank you for giving me a platform to talk about my work and express my gratitude to the people who follow me and encourage me also on Instagram, and for your friendship and promoting the book for me, because it means a lot. Because I did spend a lot of time producing the book. My wife is also our photo stylist, and she spends a huge amount of time with the photographer and all that. So it's a team effort for sure. I'm excited to share it and get people's feedback, because I think they're going to be thrilled with it.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to, I did I did take a peek, so you can pre-order it right now. By the time this episode comes out, we'll be looking at March, but it comes out in April, but you can pre-order. So also in the show notes, I will make sure to link to both books, but definitely, of course, to this latest project and your website and social and all the things so that people can
Yeah.
follow along, especially over the next couple of months, because I'm sure you'll be doing all sorts of exciting
Yes.
things in the works connected to this. So yeah, I'm just excited for you and
Okay.
congratulations. And thanks for coming on here to take the time to talk about it.
Thanks for inviting me.